Should you eat a high-fat diet or a low-fat diet? Yes.
Yeah, going to say yes to both.
Going to say yes to both. Why is that?
This is because of a term that's getting around that's actually a really important term, which is metabolic flexibility.
Comes out of evolutionary biology.
It does. If you think about it, there would have been times when we could have eaten lots of carbohydrates, like during the summer when there's lots of fruits and vegetables. In the winter, you're going to have a hard time finding those sorts of things. So you're going to be eating low carbohydrate. Our bodies kind of evolved around that and took advantage of it.
Mm-hmm. And this has health repercussions. It gets very complicated in terms of the cell cycle and cell life and death and aspects of that cell cycle. I know you want to get into that. I can look at you. You're getting excited.
I'm getting a little excited, yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, we won't go into the deep science of this, but the short, simplified version of this is cells, just like us, go through a whole cycle. So they have cellular growth to maturation to cell death. And you want your cells going through all these stages to make sure that your body overall is staying healthy. And you don't want your cells stuck in one phase or another. So maturation is great, but if a cell remains in that phase for too long, you go into what's called senescence.
Right.
And senescence is really bad for our health. You actually want those cells to go through what's called programmed cell death.
Yeah.
What's really important to understand is there is a molecule, and I'm just going to give you one, in our cells called AMPK, which is the energy sensor in our cells. It basically detects the glucose levels in your blood. If glucose is really high, it deactivates AMPK, and then cells go into cellular growth, which is great. You want periods of cellular growth.
Right.
What's the issue if you have too much cellular growth? Well, there's an effect in cancer called the Warburg effect, where cancer cells create a high glucose environment around them and basically permanently keep AMPK deactivated and just stay in cellular growth. So you don't want to always be in the growth phase.
Right.
If glucose levels in the blood are moderate, you go into that maturation. But if you stay there too long, you go into cellular senescence. If glucose levels are low, AMPK gets activated, and you start seeing that programmed cell death. And again, you want some of that, but there is research showing that if you're on a keto diet for a long time, you start seeing a lot of senescence and you actually see accelerated aging. You always got to be careful of aging studies because we don't actually study somebody for 50 years to see if they age well or not.
Yes.
You're looking at markers of aging, but you do see an increase in those markers of aging on somebody who's on a keto diet for a long time.
Right. So it's this extremes of either side of the spectrum. But let's take it up a level to just diet. In simple terms, the ketogenic diet is a high-fat diet that lives kind of on one end of the extreme, and the high-carb diet that lives on the other end of the extreme. So what you're saying is if you live in either one of these worlds at the either end of the spectrum, you're in a place where it's not necessarily good in terms of health outcomes because your cells are stuck in a particular phase and they're not cycling through the full life cycle. Is that correct?
Remember, and this is theory, they aren't doing studies where they're watching somebody for 50 years on a high carb or a ketogenic diet. So they say, yes, this has impacts on aging, but it's theory based on indicators that we see.
Sure.
If you are on a high carbohydrate diet all the time, particularly if you're getting it from bad sources like processed foods and sugars, all sorts of health impacts. So you don't want to be doing that long term. Ketogenic diet, there are all sorts of indicators of health benefits when you do it in the short run. But over time, you see increased cellular senescence and you see indicators of accelerated aging in somebody on a ketogenic diet for the long term. So again, it's not a diet I would recommend in the long run. But I think short periods of being in a ketogenic state, short periods of having high blood glucose, I think are good things. But you need to be metabolically flexible, meaning you need to be cycling through.
Yeah. It really seems to go back to the old adage of everything best in moderation, and being able to put yourself in different places in terms of your diet puts your cells in different places too. And that metabolic flexibility has health outcomes that are positive.
And remember where we started, hunter-gatherer societies during the summer would have been eating a lot more carbohydrates. During the winter, they're just not available, so they wouldn't. So if I was working with an endurance athlete, I would say, when you're at the height of the season and trying to train really hard,
yeah,
I will always recommend healthy sources of carbohydrates.
Sure.
But I'd say get more carbs in your diet. When you're in the off season and the base season and you don't need all those carbohydrates, that's where I would say focus more on fats, focus more on proteins, get the carbohydrates down, and you're probably going to be helping your health in the long run.
Absolutely. Well, we had a thorough discussion about the high fat versus high carb diet. 2 studies came out recently with Dr. Timothy Noakes, Dr. Louise Burke, 2 titans of sports nutrition, and we did an entire podcast episode about that. So check that out as well. Thanks for listening today. Give us a like and a subscribe. Thanks for watching.